Good day, everybody, and welcome to another edition of the Military and Foreign Affairs Network. I am your host, the voice of reason. Today, we're going to have a close look at the ongoing fighting that is taking place in Kherson, on the western bank of Kherson, of the Dnieper River, near Kherson. And obviously, this is day 223 of the ongoing Russia-Ukrainian war. Now, we're going to first start and we're going to have a look at the Russian force composition that is located on the western bank of the Dnieper River. Now, obviously, this map that I'm showing you is probably not entirely accurate. There are probably forces that are missing in terms of unit symbology that you're seeing here. Are probably not present. But I'm going to go over at least what this map is saying in terms of Russian forces, and then we'll have a look at the Ukrainian forces as well. And this right now could be ultimately a serious turning point in the war, especially for the Russians, if they lose this western bank of the Dnieper River. Very, very important. And I'll kind of go into that maybe a little bit more detail as we review this. So if we start kind of in the northeast and we work our way down to the south, we'll see several different unit markers. Okay. So first, you'll see this little box here, and this is identified as a Russian air assault brigade. The X means brigade, and the X with this little symbol on the top here is airmobile. So this is the 83rd Russian Air Assault Brigade. It is what the Russians would consider an elite unit. These are units of the Russian airborne forces. And these forces, while having an airborne capability, are normally used in an air assault type of manner, meaning they come in on helicopters. In this case, I suspect that most of these forces are mounted on armored vehicles, BTRs, BMPs, BMDs, BMD 4s, 3s, BMP 2s, with possible elements of tank units attached to the 83rd Air Assault Brigade. Roughly 3 battalions make up an Air Assault Brigade, and then there could be additional support units that have been augmented to the 83rd Brigade operating in this area. Supporting, at least in this northeast sector, assisting the 83rd Brigade is 1, 2, 3 forward deployed battalion tactical groups of the Russian ground forces. Now, each of these, you see the circle with the X, that means it's basically a mechanized infantry, the 2 sticks at the top, battalion tactical group. This unit is probably numbers anywhere from 600 to 800 personnel. Could be as low as 300 to 400, depending on what's happening on the ground. Casualties. Has it been reinforced? Difficult to say. So you could say that in all probability, these battalion tactical groups number anywhere from 300 to 800 personnel, but very difficult, upwards to 1,000. But again, it just depends on what's happening within this sector. And the 83rd Brigade, again, is 3 battalions normally, with some additional support companies and battalions as well. So you're probably looking at, if it's the entire 83rd Air Assault Brigade, probably anywhere from 1,200 to 2,000 personnel. So not a huge force in this area, at least what's shown on this map with the unit designators. Now, obviously, there could be Russian National Guard forces that are augmenting these forces. There could be Russian Spetsnaz of the GRU that could be augmenting these forces, forces of the KSO, the Russian Special Operations Command, operating. So there could be additional forces we're just not seeing. And then at least on this map, there is an additional reserve battalion tactical group covering this vital location right here, Nova Kakhovka. And this is a dam in which the Russians are able to move forces and supplies back and forth into the western bank. To the south, again, 1, 2, 3 Russian battalion tactical groups with the 108th Russian Airborne Regiment operating as well in that area. Specifically, this is the 108th Guards Kuban Cossack Air Assault Regiment. Again, air mobile with an airborne component, but roughly three battalions in this regiment that is operating just to the northwest of Kherson. And then backing that force up again is a battalion tactical group further to the southeast. So in total, at least according to this map, and we have to ask how accurate it is, and we just don't know, that at least on the western bank of the Dnieper River, the Russians currently have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 battalion tactical groups. And again, each of those battalion tactical groups, let's just say 600 to 800 personnel, with anywhere from 40 to 50, maybe 60 infantry fighting vehicles and tanks. Not a huge force. And then additionally, the 83rd Air Assault Brigade and the 108th Air Assault Regiment. Both of these are VDV formations. So in total, 6 battalions, theoretically, of Russian VDV or airborne air assault forces that are probably being used as a motorized infantry fighting the Ukrainians. Now, again, in all probability, you've got forces here that are backing up those Russian ground forces. Again, probably large numbers of Russian National Guard have been deployed, and then again, additional Russian Spetsnaz and Special Operations Force. Now, if you look at the Ukrainian side, and again, it's difficult to say for certain how accurate this is, but at least in the north, you've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 maneuver brigades, ranging from mechanized brigades, motorized brigades, air mobile brigades, to artillery regiments, the 406th and the 17th. Each of those probably have 3 artillery battalions, including HIMARS, attached to these units. These units as well also have attached artillery as well. So a significantly larger Ukrainian force that is being brought to bear against Russian forces. In the south, closer to Kherson, you have 1, 2, 3, 4 Ukrainian maneuver brigades. And additionally, you have Marine independent battalions operating as well. So you could probably say these are an additional brigade of Ukrainian naval infantry. So again, much larger force engaging the smaller Russian 108th Air Assault Regiment, backed up by a couple of battalion tactical groups. Now, how accurate is that? Again, we just don't know at this point. I would say that on the defensive, if, and this is a big if, which we're not seeing right now, and we haven't really seen during the entire course of this conflict, and that would be the active participation of the Russian Air Force that is able to operate effectively over the battlefield. And unfortunately for Russian forces, we just have not seen that. This would go a lot easier for the Russian ground forces if they had that air capability. If they had an air force, anything even somewhat similar to what the United States Air Force is able to deploy, the situation would look a lot different. And I think going into this forces, most analysts would have agreed that, yes, the Russians would be able to provide adequate airstrike capability to Russian ground forces. But we're not seeing that. And again, just from what we're able to see from open source information and information that is sent our way, not a very good Air Force. Let's just say that. If you see the way some of the helicopter gunships attack targets, and I don't even know, you could say that they're attacking targets. They go nose up and then they fire rockets in the direction of Ukrainian forces. That is not air support. I don't even think you could call that the suppression of enemy forces. I'm not sure what you call it. And again, we're just not seeing the Russians deploy those Su-34s, the fullbacks. Those aircraft have precision-guided capability. They don't have the same sensor pods, targeting pods, that the U.S. and NATO forces use, or even the Chinese have these systems. But we don't see it from the Russians. And it's very difficult for me to, as we watch this, to understand why the Russians have not deployed these types of systems, especially the targeting pods. I mean, that is just a no-brainer in modern war, and I don't get it. And maybe we'll know more eventually and try to understand why. Look, I get the Ukrainian air defense network, very robust. That was a very large force going into this war. Now, you're talking well over 100 S-300s. A lot of air defense capability. Compounding that was the United States' ability to feed the Ukrainians real-time intelligence in terms of inbound Russian aircraft. And I guess at this point that the ability of the Ukrainian air defenses to engage and shoot down Russian aircraft has just taken a toll on Russian forces, and they're just not willing to operate over the battlefield at this point. At least in terms of size and scope that would be needed to change the dynamic that we're seeing on the battlefield right now. It's very, very interesting to watch what is happening, and I wouldn't doubt, it wouldn't surprise me that years down the road after this conflict is over and hopefully civilization is okay and there not has been an exchange of nuclear weapons, because look, this is nasty, and we're heading towards the possible release of nuclear weapons. It's becoming more likely, not less likely. Now, is it going to happen? Are we going to see a release of nuclear weapons? I hope not. But again, that gravitational pull towards something akin to World War III is becoming more likely. It's not becoming less likely. But again, as I had said before, if this ends and we look in retrospect in terms of some clandestine activity that occurred, it would not surprise me if F-35s and F-22s are actively flying at night over Ukraine, sensing targets for the Ukrainians. Would not surprise me at all if this is happening. Because I'm not so sure, especially at night and at distance, the Russians have the ability to target or see the F-35s and the F-22s, or some other system that the United States has deployed and we just aren't aware of. Meaning it's a system that is not open source as of yet. And again, all likelihood, they're up there in the sky. But this kind of gives you a picture of what's happening on that western bank of Kherson and why this is so challenging for Russian forces right now. Look, the Ukrainians are fighting a total war. They have they have disallowed all Ukrainian males to leave the country. They are conducting widespread conscription and mobilization efforts in Ukraine. The Russians are just starting this, and it's showing. The Ukrainians are able to deploy more infantry than the Russians are at this point. Now, obviously, the Russians are making efforts to change that, and this conflict could look a lot different 2 months from now, especially if Russia fully mobilizes. I have no doubt that if Russia commits itself completely to this undertaking, it could turn the corner. Has it done it yet? I'm not sure. I think it's starting to. And that could be bad for the Ukrainians. I mean, it could be bad for the whole world if eventually the Russians start to target. And I believe the Russians have a legitimate right to target NATO forces in Poland, especially given the fact that NATO has allowed a non-NATO state to conduct training operations on its soil. I don't think that's in the NATO charter, but they're allowing it to happen. Meaning tens of thousands of Ukrainian troops are able to go into Poland and train without the risk of being engaged by Russian cruise missiles. Ukrainian tanks and armored fighting vehicles are able to just cross into Poland and refit and repair. So, do the Russians have the right to target those assets under the rules of war? Probably. And then what does that lead to? Well, I think we all know the answer to that. But that's kind of where we sit right now. We're going to continue to watch this, report what's happening, and bring you as much detailed information about this ongoing war as we possibly can, and its risks that continue to increase. That's what we have for today. Thanks for joining us. More to come. And as always, have a good day.